Pod.
Rugby pod.
Hello and welcome back to the Rugby Pod for a special midweek episode where myself and my good friend Andrew will be reacting to the test team for the second game and breaking down all the week's Lions drama. There ain't been much drama, been a bit.
Well, there was plenty of drama on the field on Tuesday, Jim, between the Lions and the First Nations Pasifika XV, or the FNP, as everyone was calling them. Henry Pollock just doing Henry Pollock things, getting ragdolled around again, annoying people. Faz, getting elbows out, banging boys.
I know. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. They called it handbags back in the day, but you can't say that. But it was good to see Owen Farrell back, and he is back because he is on the bench for the second test, and we'll get stuck into that as well. And did love it seeing him sticking up for Darcy Graham, who unfortunately got injured. So we will reference that throughout the show. So let's save all of that, Andrew, because we must first settle back, relax. I'm recording in the evening. It's 11 o'clock at night. You're recording and it's 5 o'clock in the morning in Greece. What time is it?
7 o'clock in the morning there, James.
Well, wherever you are in the world, make sure you enjoy, you settle back, you peel back, and you subscribed on Spotify. So how are you anyway, mate? I saw you posting some stuff on social media, and we did chat about it on the last episode, which was only a couple of days ago. Are you feeling the pain of children and holiday and trying to balance that Instagram life and putting the beers and the cocktails out there, but really just shouting at the kids and praying for the nanny?
Yeah, it's lovely, but it's up and down. Like, they don't listen to a word I say, let's be honest.
Mate, you know what I laughed at?
Go on.
So you're putting pictures of the kids up on social media, and they're immaculate. The girls are. They're well dressed. They got Louis Vuitton handbag. They got the Gucci shoes. And what I laughed
That's nothing to do with me. That's nothing to do with me.
But I don't expect anything less. They'll be get Rolex watches as well for their 8th birthdays. But we were out in the mountains yesterday, and we got back, and me and Bet were absolutely fucked. We've been out all day. Posted on social media, no dramas, but it was full of drama. And Max, one of the twins, went to bed, and I tucked him into bed, and his foot was hanging out the bottom of the bed, and he didn't put him in bed properly. The bed wasn't small; that's not what it was. And he had his foot hanging out, and his foot was black. It was absolutely filthy. And as I tucked him in, he had mud and marshmallows all over his face, and he had a black foot, and his hands were filthy. And I laughed because I was like, if only Goodey could see this now, he'd be absolutely horrified, because the girls have gone to bed with their hair plaited. They've probably been moisturised on their feet and their hands and their face. And it was just the contrast of our lives, mate. It did make me laugh. But yeah, let's get into it. Still got a bit of FOMO and a bit of time to reflect from the podcast on Monday. I still feel that way, that I feel like we're missing out, but we're getting into test 2 now. Do we round up the game on Tuesday, which was a stuffy game for the Lions? We probably should do the obligatories right before we get into the test side.
Yeah, it was a bit of a stuffy game, but there's some good parts. Some lovely seeds from Finn Smith with the back plays that we saw that led to tries. Jamie Osborne played pretty well.
Good.
I know very good. I know there's no impact on him being in the test match 23 for this week, but it's just good to see, isn't it? A lad coming in late and then performing exceptionally well. And the big talking point really was Owen Farrell. And as we get further into this podcast, we're obviously going to talk about the makeup of the test team, which Owen Farrell undoubtedly has played himself into the mix on pure form, on everything that he's done on the pitch since he's got to Australia, as well as off the pitch, and leadership credentials and everything that goes with that. But ultimately, it was a bits and pieces game. We flew into a 14-0 lead. The Darcy Graham story probably sums up the evening out in Australia. Many people would have said Darcy Graham should have been on tour initially. He eventually gets on tour after getting red carded for Scotland and all that stuff, and getting off because it was just 2 yellow cards. And the story around it, so he ends up starting, scores within 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes later he's coming off injured, and that's the end of his Lions tour. It probably summed up the night, how you can have such a high and then such a low with his own sort of individual story. But yeah, it's always a banana skin, isn't it? You're playing against what we talked about on the podcast last week, a bunch of physical specimens. You got Salakaia-Loto ragdolling Finn Smith, his old Northampton teammate, around when the little scuffle kicks off. Finn Smith's obviously gone over to him and as if to have a bit of a joke and try and pick him out, so they just have a man hug, and he's gone, no, just ragdolled him to the floor. And you're playing against bigger units, aren't you, than the Australia team? And that, I might go as far as saying that First Nations team would have beaten the Australia team from Test 1 because they showed a lot of heart, a lot of physicality. And the Lions got a little bit loose after racing into a 14-0 lead. Blair Kinghorn gets his pass intercepted. But realistically, the whole story of the game was just about Owen Farrell and what he can produce. And we've seen him. We've seen Jack Morgan now named on the bench as well. And James Ryan on the bench. And things have sort of fallen into place from the substitutions, from how other players are injured. And a few guys took their opportunities, but that's really about it. The Lions were lucky to hang on. I don't know what the First Nations were doing booting the ball away after the 80-minute mark had gone when you're chasing the game. But hey, that's rugby union. Let's get down the boozer.
Well, my thoughts were it's a tough game to play in, right? It's a Tuesday. Do the Lions really need that game? They don't. Okay, and we can get through the team in a minute and some of the injuries that have been picked up. Gary Ringrose being the headline one that was meant to start at 13. Off the back of playing 65 minutes on a Tuesday. You know my thoughts on that, playing on a Tuesday and playing on a Saturday. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But when I was watching the game, like even during the game, but more so after on reflection, like thinking about the players that played well and the players that didn't play that well, but have been picked for the 23 at the weekend, and also reflecting on comments of fans and almost having the same view as you about Owen Farrell, but then contradicting myself on this podcast and us contradicting ourselves when we're talking about, is Andy Farrell picking his 23 on form? He ain't. He ain't doing that, mate. And that's what I picked up from the game on Tuesday, that it didn't matter how well anyone played in that game. They ain't playing themselves into the test team at the weekend. So what was the point of it? And I understand some of the fans' frustrations. Let me put this on record. I would do the same as Faz. I would pick proven performers. I'd pick players that I trust. I pick my 23 that I want. And it's been so difficult for the coaches because the level of opposition has been so poor, apart from Tuesday, that was a lot better, is the only outlier within all this, and maybe it's more through fault rather than design, is the fact that Owen Farrell is now in the matchday 23. I predicted it last week. We predicted it 2 weeks ago when he got called up, that he would feature probably in Test 2, but through injury and, Marcus Smith, we don't know what's wrong with him and whatever. And
he got a bang, Marcus got a bang, didn't he? So
yeah, exactly.
HIA protocols, but I'd say pick him on form, on what he's produced on the field. And if we get into the nuts and bolts of it, first thing I need to say, Jim, are you the Oracle? No, actually, you are the Oracle. Have you got the hand on the pulse? Direct line to Faz. What's going on? You know everything.
Some might say. Some might say. Some might say. I do feel as if I know Andy Farrell. Just because he's his own man. He's a hard northerner. All these lines that we've put out, right? He hasn't picked on form throughout. As he picked on form when he picked the tested, like you mentioned, Darcy Graham. Like, he didn't pick Darcy Graham. Darcy Graham has been on fire. Okay, he's had a few niggles around that. Jack Willis was on fire. Tom Willis. So there's been players and stuff that have been standout players that haven't been picked. He's a man that's his own man. He knows his own mind. He knows his own heart, where he wants to go. But the fans are really frustrated, aren't they? You saw that around Jack Morgan. You saw that about Owen Farrell getting called up and no Tom Jordan getting called up. He's going with who he wants to go, and he's not going based on form from that game on Tuesday or how the lads played in the 50-point pump-ins against some of the midweek sides that they've had. So when you say the Oracle, I just feel as if like I are close enough to the game to know that he was going to pick Owen Farrell at some point. He ain't brought him in the squad just to make up the numbers. And the fact that his form has been good, more so his fitness has been there, that has given him the ability to pick him. And probably because Marcus then has been injured, but I still think Owen would have been in the 23 as well. And then we were talking about Gary Ringrose, weren't we? How unfortunate is that he was named to start and then he got injured in training on Thursday. I thought he'd go with Gary just because we know he loves Gary Ringrose and because he's a ruthless selector when it comes to the small parts of the game. Like Hugh Jones made a couple of mistakes in the game. Like we did speak about it. And Gary Ringrose, it was a 50-50. And Hugh Jones is now starting, so it doesn't really matter. And, Sione Tuipulotu is the other one, and we kind of said that Bundy Aki 50-50 again. We're hearing that Sione's got a hamstring niggle, but it felt like when Andy Farrell was talking in the press conference that it was going to be Bundy Aki and Gary Ringrose 12-13. So I'm kind of going through a few things here because you called me the Oracle. I'm trying to play the humble card. But
You're not humble,
with
James.
things.
No, I'm not. No,
I called it. And I nearly called the scoreline, and I'll probably get the right scoreline at the weekend. So if you're a betting man or woman, bet with me.
Yeah, exactly. But you're right, though. And Faz, we said it from when he first sort of selected the squad. If he thinks it's right to bring an Owen Farrell in or someone else further down the line and just fast track them into the match day 23 for one reason or another, he's got one test to win and he's won the series. Right, so the way things have fallen, okay, Marcus Smith was on the bench in Test 1. He's picked up a head knock, so you need 10 cover on the bench. Sione Tuipulotu, as you said, he's got a little niggle that means he's not fit, so Bundy Aki goes straight in. Then your 10-12 combo on the bench. Owen Farrell covers that. Blair Kinghorn, he's sort of fast-forwarded into onto the bench as well because you've got to have fullback cover and wing. So the way the bits and pieces, Mac Hansen's not been fit for selection for the first or second test yet. And the way things have just fallen and the cards have fallen, and Owen Farrell has played, look at his impacts on the game, his try assist, his kick off the left foot, sees the space. And okay, they get a little bit of luck with the bounce. But ultimately, every impact he's had in the games, he deserves to be in that match day 23. And anyone that says he doesn't hasn't got a Scooby about rugby. So his kind of impactfulness around what he's done on the field and the fact that it's do or die test match, and you've got a test match animal on the bench who can kick goals, who can manage a game, and his impact on managing game and just hearing the noises around what some of the lads are saying, how calm and an influence he is and his leadership credentials, you can only judge that on what the lads are saying. And I know sometimes boys feel they have to say stuff, but you're looking at the pictures. His dad's the coach. He's a big voice in the camp. And you kind of seeing what's coming down from Andy into the playing squad. There's more control via Owen Farrell, and he fully deserves his selection.
Here's one for you. And you would have picked up on this as well. And it goes back to a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about how this story unfolds of Owen and Andy Farrell, right? They go into test 2, it's a draw, and Owen Farrell comes on and he kicks a winning penalty from the halfway line. The story's like written in the stars for them. But
you want the picture of the hug, don't you?
I want the picture on the wall in the studio, and I think it might happen, but I'm questioning myself now. Why am I questioning myself?
Well, Faz actually hasn't kicked at goal, but I thought you were going to say because fairy tales don't always come true, James, as I tell my kids. But in the main reason is Faz hasn't actually kicked at goal, but he's a world-class kicker, mate. He can stick the ball on the tee and bang it over in any pressure. Yeah.
Imagine,
so that is a question.
Imagine the story. Imagine the story, though. So he hasn't kicked, I don't know how long for. He's clearly had a groin or a pelvis issue. We know that. We know his injury profile. But on tour, he hasn't kicked one. Imagine he comes on in test 2. It's going to be tight, right? Imagine he comes on and that's all she wrote. And we as a podcast, the number one sports podcast in the UK currently, the number one rugby podcast in the world, we called it 3 weeks ago. Well, more specifically, me. Yeah. I called it. You can see it happening. It might be written in the stars for him to come on and do that. And I'm all in on it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I was right about the front row. Andrew Porter comes in as well, Jim, to an all-Irish front row with Dan Sheehan and Tyke Furlong. The big news, though, is Joe McCarthy being out injured, and this is your other area of expertise, the second rows. Ollie Chesham starts in the second row with Maratoji. Tyke Byrne stays at 6, and the back row obviously stays the same with Curry and Conan. But second row, James Ryan coming onto the bench. Ollie Chesham fully deserves that spot, right?
Yeah, well, let's break this down a little bit. So if we go back before Test 1, again, based on form, I wouldn't have gone for Tyke Byrne. You picked him in the second row, actually, for your first test team. I didn't have him in the 23, based on form. So it doesn't really matter.
I thought you were the Oracle.
Okay.
I thought you were the Oracle.
On most parts, when it comes to the back line. But he was the only one where I just didn't think, because of Ollie Chesham, I thought Ollie Chesham would have started because he's been so good. And that brings me on to my point. Ollie Chesham's been so good. So you've got a proven player, but you've also got someone that is in form. And we were talking about his Leicester form, his physicality, his charge down ability. There's an old school directness and physicality to Ollie Chesham fits. So when you heard Joe McCarthy wasn't going to be fit, you were like, right, straight comes in Ollie Chesham. James Ryan's a weird one for me because, again, if we're talking about form, right, Scott Cummins is, I would say,
Scott
been
Cummins.
better.
Yeah.
Apart from game one.
Not, I would say, Scott Cummins has been outstanding.
There you go. Okay, so when you're looking at the team coming out now and social media, and I get it, you don't base you base your opinions on your opinion, but then you look to social media to see what the interactions of your opinions are. And people are Scots, they're raging. But again, Andy Farrell's going to do what he wants to do, and he knows what he's getting from James Ryan. Even when he brought him off on Tuesday, I was thinking, okay, if there's a bench spot up for grabs, maybe he doesn't have a second row on the bench because you can pull Ty Burn up into there and then you could put an extra back row and then that frees up Henry Pollock. I was certain he was going to go with Henry Pollock. Henry Pollock couldn't have done any more, but too young, inexperienced, whatever the reason is. And you know what? Andy Farrell's probably right. You know, when it comes to experience and these things, and that's what he's going with. He's going with James Ryan on the bench. Is he in form? No. Is he got experience? Does Andy Farrell know him? Yes. And that's the reason why. Because if it was based on form, you'd go Scott Cummins, or you would go two back rows on the bench, and you'd go with a Henry Pollock or a Josh van der Fleer, even with a Jack Morgan, which is cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, obviously, with the balance, you've got obviously the 2 second rows starting. Tyburn, realistically, is now a second row, but he's at 6. You've got 4 second rows in the matchday squad with James Ryan on the bench. And so does the back row look thin if there's an injury? I know Jack Morgan obviously comes on, but you're right. I was surprised he has gone with James Ryan on the bench as opposed to another back rower like a Ben Earl. Is he injured? You're the Oracle. Where's he gone?
Well, he was on the bench. He came on. I don't know. I think what Andy Farrell's done, he's just slightly narrowed and tightened up the team. That's what it feels like. He's gone for a little bit more size. And you look at the Australia team with Will Skelton, Rob Valentini coming in. I don't think Skelton gets 80 minutes. I'll be surprised if he doesn't. Fair play if he does. But I think that the Lions are expecting a more direct, a more physical. And Andy Farrell's gone for mass. That's what he's gone for, with a James Ryan, with having the 4 second row specifically, with sticking with Ronan Kelleher and Will Stewart and the front row coming off the bench. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's a direct impact of that second half performance, right? So where the Aussies had some kind of green shoots in their attack and some success was in the round breakdowns, picking and going a bit, keeping it really tight. Harry Wilson carrying, Tate McDermott when he came on, just attacking around the fringes. And we said it on the podcast on Monday, didn't we? Around you add in Will Skelton, you add in Valentini. I know he hasn't picked Taniela-Tupou, but you add in some of the big carcasses that he has got, and that becomes a lot harder to defend. And so you're dead right. I think the fact that Australia have gone 6-2 as well on their bench goes to show that ultimately it's going to be a big carcass game in and around the fringes where you've got to make tackles, you've got to make dents. The physicality from both teams is going to be off the charts. Australians are going to show desperation in front of 100,000 fans at the MCG, one of the best stadiums in the world. And there'll be 50, 60,000 Lions fans there, by the way, probably. But that stadium is iconic around the world in cricket and AFL, and for rugby to play there, it is, absolutely phenomenal. So 100,000 people, Aussies, last chance saloon, desperation. You lose, the Test series is done, and the Lions with everything on the line, and ultimately you nick it by a point. You're the first team to win since we went to Australia in 2013. To win a Lions series. So with everything on the line, you just go big bodies, and it might be a bit of an arm wrestle game.
Pitching it done,
to be fair.
Apparently.
Yeah. So, kicking is going to be, if it's pitching it done, no better man than Owen Farrell, right? So everything's aligning. Andy Farrell's not a daft man. He'll looked at the weather forecast and everything that goes with it. And it's just going to be, a war, isn't it? It's going to be It has to. It suits you. Pick and go, scrappy dappy do.
Well, I got asked to play in the Lions game versus the Wallabies, the classic game that's going on now as we record. And it would be funny seeing some of the lads playing in that. That's as far as the invitation got for me for the Lions.
You just said no.
But it has to be. It has to be. I don't like using the word war, but in a sporting terms, it needs to have that feel to it, because if you're Australian, right, if you're a player and you're feeling it, right, you're feeling the heat, I imagine they felt a little bit embarrassed with what happened in the first test. And they're there. They're feeling it. They are representing their team, but they're representing their country and pride and all of these things. And we know the Australians have that in them, right? So if you think that the weather's going to be a leveler, okay, which it always is, but there's also two areas of concern for the Lions, and we saw it on Tuesday, and we've seen it throughout the whole tour, right? That if the Australian team, if the Wallabies can get it right with the players that they've got, and they can get their kicking game right, and the weather is what we think it's going to be, because it does play a massive factor. It does. Slippy ball, going 100%. Up in the air. They can cause the Lions problems. And you know what? As a rugby man and as a fan, I hope they do. I hope they cause us problems. And I hope the game's close. And you know what? I'll be honest, there is a part of me that wants to see them win, because I don't want it to be 2-0 after 2 games. Andrew, be honest with me. Would you rather it be 2-0? We're winning the third test, right? We ain't going home from Australia having lost this series. Fact. Okay. It is an absolute...
That's a big thing to say, James.
I don't know what I could put on it. I'd put something very special on it, to me. I'd put my lid on it. What? I've got nothing else. I don't know. My lid, my moustache.
Okay, so let's say on here, if Australia win this test series, you're shaving your lid and your moustache off. Down to a number 1.
No, I don't.
Yeah, but you just said you put your lid on it, so come on. Be a man of your word. The Oracle, right. The Oracle.
Well, I've done that. There's a part of me that wants to see Australia win this game. 100,000 people in the Melbourne Stadium for the sake of the third test, that we win comfortably. Is there a part of you, Andrew, that wants that, or are you just ruthless enough to say, let's just do them next week, and then third game no one's bothered about, like in '97 when the Lions beat South Africa in the first 2 tests?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Yeah, the honesty is, I'd rather the Lions win on Saturday, and we've won the series, right? But there is, of course, there's a part, and I'm sure there's a part in every Lions fan that says, how good would it, if you're one of the ones that have got a ticket for Sydney in the third test, to say, how good would it be if it went to a decider? Because it will be, we win it 2-0. That third test is always a damp squib. But ultimately, you judge on success, and Faz would like to win it 3-0.
I think we win, right? I think the Lions win. I'll give you my score prediction at the end. You can go out and put a bet on. You're probably going to make millions of pounds, because I am the Oracle.
Yes.
I think we win this game. In fact, I kind of think I know we win this game, and it's going to be a lot tighter. But for the sake of the tour, mate, we ain't lost a game. I don't know. I just thought more from Australia, and I said that in the episode that we recorded earlier in the week. But I look at the team: Will Skelton in the second row, Rob Valentini, Dave Parecki, my former teammate, who I didn't rate as highly as he showed when he played for Australia last year and the year before, like physical as anything. I do see a different team.
I think ultimately the success that Australia had was the tight phases, the pick and go. They scored the try from Jorgensen, didn't they, from the kicking game, which, as the Oracle Jim Hamilton says, Jake Gordon was a huge part of that. A lot of people would have been crying out for Tate McDermott to start, but with the weather the way it is, the box kicking element to it, and territory, a lot of pressure again on Tom Liner to start. But I think they'll go a real close quarters game with Ikitau and Suaalii bashing it up the middle as well. And then it'll be scraps and kick chase and territory. And the weather will dictate that. But this Australia team will show a hell of a lot more ticker than they did last Saturday because of desperation with everything on the line. And bit of a surprise to not see Taniela-Tupou on the bench at least. I don't know what Joe Schmidt's problem is. Like he was physical, wasn't he, on Tuesday? I've heard stuff that he's not a fan of certain people because they're detailed, but when you've got a freak like Taniela-Tupou and a physical specimen, I don't see how you don't have him on the bench in a do or die game.
Yeah, but I think you can give more detail to that because we were talking up Joe Schmidt. A lot of people have been talking him up in the past few weeks and months and the time he's been involved with the Wallabies, how he's turned them around. So off the back of our podcast and some of our comments we've made, especially around Tupou, and you look at some of the experts talking about how he wasn't fit, how he kind of checked out and whatever, and all of these different things. And, he did his interview and he didn't understand where he was in the kind of pecking order and in Joe Schmidt's plans. But I think going into a few more, and they are just rumours, allegedly, and all of these things, that Joe Schmidt doesn't like the fact that some of these players step outside of a system. So the way that he plays and the way that he makes up his team is very systematic. Probably similar to Andy Farrell, but I think more strict is what you heard when he was with Ireland and when he's with Australia. And if you've got lads who are just looking to carry off anything and like on Tuesday, like Tupou's flying out the line, isn't he? Offside, then it's a penalty and halfway and doing these things off the cuff.
Maybe, and this is a Joe Schmidt thing again, when we talked about he doesn't like people going out of system or whatever, and he's big on stats and staying into the system of how you play and what you do. You mentioned he flew out the line a few times. His stats from Tuesday, and certain players I think can get away with stats like this. Maybe not the penalty count, but his stats from Tuesday, he missed 5 out of 11 tackles. And as we saw him flying out and trying to bang boys. And props you can have, missed tackles is a different stat now, isn't it? Because you can have impactful missed tackles where they go into another channel and you get a turnover or whatever. But the big one, on Tuesday, he gave away 5 pens. I mean, that's Jim Hamilton stats. The Oracle and Taniela-Tupou. You'd be happy with just 5 in a game?
I would have been happy with 5, yeah. In a test match, yeah. In a warm-up, yeah, I probably would have wanted 12.
Yeah, but maybe that's a big part of it as well. But I still think, his benefits far outweigh the odd negative. You bring him off the bench, I'd like to have seen Taniela-Tupou play or be on the bench at least. But maybe those stats are why Joe Schmidt is a very intelligent coach and can turn this around for the Aussies, Jim.
But I'm hearing, and we're hearing, that Joe Schmidt doesn't like players like that. And there's even a few players that he's picked, and I don't want to name drop them because I do know some of them listen to the pod, that he's picked and he's had to pick that he feels the same way about because they aren't detail driven. And he's gone with Will Skelton in the second row. I'm not saying that isn't the case.
You can't not pick Will Skelton, can you?
Well, he could have picked him last week, apparently.
Oh, really? I thought
week.
Yeah, I mean, from what I heard, it was if it was do or die third test or even do or die second test, him and Valentini would have been fit last week. And Valentini's been their best player for the last 2 years. I think he's won the John Eales Award as Australia's best player over the last 2 seasons. And I have heard snippets that Joe Schmidt isn't a huge fan of Rob Valentini, which is bonkers because he's an absolute freak show. Big ball carrier, goes around banging boys, the physical presence that he brings and the uplift to every other player, which was clearly lacking in that first test. Just standing next to Will Skelton makes you grow as a human being. Not literally, but you've played with him, Jim. And I'm sure if you stood next to a bloke like that and the opposition are looking at you going, oh, shit, like you will grow a little bit bigger, a little bit harder, your chest sticks out. And that's what Australia were massively missing in that first test, and you then stick him and Rob Valentini in the team, and you've got two absolute monsters in there to really raise the tempo of the physicality and the ball carrying. I think it's going to be a very different Australia team, as you said on Monday, James.
Yeah, well, I listened back to my episode on the Big Jim Show with Johan van Gram, who, as we know, friend of our show, came on the pod, and he was talking about the spine of the team, right? Okay, and we can go hooker, we can go fly half, we can go back three, squad depth, scrum, all of these things which are ticking the boxes along the way. The one thing that he said that really stuck out, that probably isn't spoken about enough more confidently because of the way that we want the game to be for all shapes and sizes and grow and have small guys playing, which we've spoken about, right? We've spoken about Louis Biel-Barret and we love Ches and Colby and these smaller players. Johan made the point which we believe in, we've spoken about, and which will never go away. Rugby is about the gain line. It's about physicality. It's about playing it. And if you can't do that, you ain't winning shit. You ain't. And Australia, last week, they were nowhere near it. Even when they went through the phase and they looked better in that second half, they were at the gate, like there was a kind of few edges that they were getting through. They weren't getting anywhere. And if you're Tom Liner, the poor lad, right, and everything's static and there's nothing in front of you, what can you do? And that's where you're right about someone like Will Skelton. You look at him and you know he's getting over gain line. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's half fit. Doesn't matter if he's played 1 game or 10 games. He's getting over the gain line for you. He's going to give you something to kick off. He's going to give you something, then he'll give you an edge. And that's such an important point in all this. And something we've kind of said. And with Rob Valentini and with Will Skelton specifically, them doing that then gets Joseph Suaalii into the game. Do you know what I mean? And I imagine that with Joseph Suaalii, they'll be thinking of, I thought they might have picked him on the wing, by the way, but they need to get him in the game. They need to get Joseph Suaalii in the game. Otherwise, there's absolutely no point. And there's 2 ways in which you do that. It's front foot quick ball, or the other way is kicking the ball even further into the skies, because the Lions have looked poor when the ball goes in the air.
Yeah, I'd say vulnerable. Poor is very harsh.
I'd say poor. But Andrew, why are you being so nice? You're tired, okay? I'm tired because I've been up since 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, you're angry. You're like,
I'd say you have to say it how it is, even on Tuesday.
True. Yeah,
and
true.
that's the one part of the game, that and the breakdown, where again, I'm an oracle when it comes to podcasting. I'm not an oracle when it comes to making up a test match team that could beat the Lions at the weekend. But if you're Joe Schmidt, what are you doing? You're targeting breakdown and you're kicking the ball up in the air. Simple game. It's a simple game, Andrew.
Well, you go back to the series 12 years ago that the Lions won, and it was similar, wasn't it? So the Lions win the first test. Second test was a bit of a kick fest, and the Aussies took it to the wire. They found it within themselves, and they were a much better team back then than this Australia team are now. But you hope they can replicate that kind of intensity and that kind of desire and will, and that it is a close game. And part of me does want Australia to win so that we get to a decider and in Sydney, and it will be an epic finish to the tour. Whereas a major part of me, and the majority of me, just wants the Lions to get the job done. 2-0. No Englishman ever wants to lose to Australia at anything, because they're the worst people when you lose to them, right? Whether that's cricket, whether that's rugby, whatever it is, the Australians do not like the English, and the English are a part of this British and Irish Lions tour. So actually stuff it. I want the Lions to win 2-0, and then we'll go and take the Sydney test and make it 3 as well.
What else is there? So there's cricket and rugby. What else is there?
Swimming. There's a lot of swimming that goes on.
Come on. Athletics, maybe. I don't know.
Rugby league,
there is nothing
James.
Else.
Rugby league.
Yeah, rugby league. Yeah, you are right. Back in the day.
But it's the history of coming up against the Aussies. And ultimately, yes, we do want the competitive edge to be there. And I don't want it to be a damp squib like it was. That first test was a damp squib, wasn't it, I think? With how good the Lions were in the first 42 minutes, and it was nothing coming back from the Aussies. And like you said, they were all right in their pick and go game and making the odd yard, but it was turgid. It was, the game was done on 42 minutes. We don't want to see that in in Melbourne at the MCG on Saturday. We want to see it going right to the wire, and then someone like Owen Farrell coming on and dropping a goal or kicking the winner from somewhere and hugging his dad. And then Jim has got his perfect picture for his studio.
We're not doing in other news, but in other news, we've got producer Ben working in the background, and there's a few things that are coming out as we're recording. So I mentioned about Gary Ringrose. I thought it was a hamstring. Turns out, unfortunately for him, that it's to do with his concussion, yeah, like a reoccurrence of his concussion-related injury, which one is not good for him because of his history that he's had. I thought it was his hamstring, and yeah,
Sione's
what a shame for
hammy.
Gary Ringrose. And again, now Sione misses out with a hamstring strain. So before we recorded this, as we're recording just as the team come out, like these things are starting to rear their head. So these are the reasons why.
Yeah, and it's actually, from what I understand, Gary Ringrose is the guy that went to Andy Farrell and said he didn't feel right, which Gary Ringrose has had many issues with concussion. And, it's a big talking point in the game around recovery. And, for Gary Ringrose to do that when you're probably picked, or you are picked to start in the second test because Jim Hamilton's picked you, that's a big thing, isn't it? Just looking after yourself and knowing that you're not quite right and having the cojones. Because a lot of lads will just, I can get through this. It's a Lions test. You want to play in it. And, ultimately, for Gary Ringrose, who this is his first Lions tour as well, this is a potentially deciding game that he's starting. For him to do that, it clearly can't be fully right, but also pat on the back to him for looking after himself, because that's a hard thing to do, right? You've not started a Lions test match. And ultimately, the dream could have been yours. You could have been the match winner on Saturday. But he's put his hand up and said he's not right. And it's a massive shame, but it gives Hugh Jones another opportunity to hopefully put in a big performance and help the British and Irish Lions win the series.
That shows the shift as well of our athletes, right? Because if that's me or you a few years ago, you ain't saying shit.
No, nothing at all.
You're not. Do you know what I mean? And also, there'd be a part where your coach wouldn't say anything either. So it's great that there's a real understanding now about looking after the brain and all of these things. So feel for Gary Ringrose, really do. Andrew, we will give our predictions, and we've given our hopes and dreams for the test too. But one thing to flag, right? And we're talking about the injuries and players having to play on a Tuesday, Gary Ringrose playing 65 and now not been able to play the second test. Does the game on Tuesday and the way that game was played, the physicality around it, the fact that it would have upset the training week for the Lions? I'm clutching at straws here, right? As the Australians will be as well. I'm putting my Australia hat on because I want it to go to game 3. I want it to be epic at the weekend. Maybe that is their chance. The fact that they picked Will Skelton, they've got Rob Valentini back, they've got Parecki now playing at hooker, but the fact that they got bashed around as a squad on Tuesday, I don't know. I'm clutching at straws. Give us something. How's it going down?
I still think the Lions have got too much, apart from Swaliti and Ikitau in the centres, I don't see a lot in the Australian backline. I know Tom Wright fullback's pretty good, but I just feel that the Lions and the control that they have and the power game that they had in that first test, yes, you're adding in Valentini, Will Skelton, Parecki, as you mentioned, and I think that it'll be a lot closer. Like, it wasn't even a contest.
Even though it was 8 points, it wasn't a contest.
No, it wasn't a contest at all. And the scoreline flattered Australia, and the Lions took their foot off the gas and made a few errors because the game was done and the bench didn't have the impact it did. It will be a lot tighter, and Australia will have moments in the game where the noise will be lifted in the stadium because Will Skelton or Rob Valentini more so will be able to lift that energy by banging someone or making a break. Tate McDermott comes on and, has a bit of an impact, speeds it up a bit. I just think the Lions have got too much with Conan and Curry and Tyke Byrne and Marrow, Norsin and, it's mouthwatering Marrow coming up against his old clubmate as well, Will Skelton, right? Is there any Yeah, that's man on man, isn't it? Marrow likes to try and be an alpha physical second row, doesn't he? And he's nosing and he's in the breakdown, smashing. Will Skelton, similar kind of beast, with a bit more timber on him. So, that matchup's going to be exciting. Porter coming in at Loosehead has had a history, and it's somewhere scrummaging. It's gone all right for the Lions. We saw things went against Ellis Genge a little bit in that first test. Porter, the big question mark, and if you're Joe Schmidt, you know Andrew Porter better than most other coaches. You're talking about the angle that Andrew Porter scrums at, because that's where he gets caught out, right, Jim? And then you start to add in a few of these bits and pieces. If, a lot of the Aussies were moaning about some of the refereeing decisions from that first test, where Tom Curry takes out liner in the air, where Benno's tackle probably is borderline illegal because he's got his knee on the floor with no arms and that sort of stuff. There was another instance as well when Tyg Furlong, banged someone in the head on a clear out, and they're asking for yellow cards. Australians are one way that way. I thought the referee probably got those decisions spot on with just penalties.
Good coach.
I'm at the other end of the spectrum. But imagine those things are turned in a tighter game, and ultimately Aussies gain momentum from it. It could go the other way, but I'm going. I just think the Lions have got too much. And the weather could be a leveler as well. But I'm going British and Irish Lions 24, Australia 12.
Andrew, before I give my prediction, remind me who the ref is for the weekend.
The ref for the second test is Andrea Piardi, which means that fucking anything can happen. 1 minute it's you can lie all over the ball, next minute you can come in at any angle. The next time, no, you've come in on the angle. Anything's going. Like,
Kelly, you can take the neck, you just can't take the neck. Because it's going to come down to it. Like, a lot of it, I know there's been a lot of talk. I watched the game back in Australian as well, in English, but with the Australian commentators. And they were getting really frustrated, which I understood, not just because they were losing, but on the game on Tuesday as well. They were talking about the TMO and like all of these different things and how the ref's not reffing the game and speeding up the game and all of these things. So, but I do think the referee has a big impact on the games now. I don't think it's as simple as just saying it doesn't matter who the referee is, let's take the referee out. Having Adriano Piardi, having Piardi as referee makes a big difference, because it's different to Test 1 because the way that the breakdown is managed or policed by Ben O'Keefe, who looks after the breakdown heavily. That's a large part of why he blows his whistle. And I know he did a huge amount at the weekend, but thinking about how Australia are going to approach the game and the success they got on Tuesday around the counter-rucking and the physicality around there, it maybe points itself to the fact that anything goes around there. But
you say maybe, I'm telling you it does. I'm telling you it does, Jim. It's going to be an absolute...
I'm not a World Rugby anymore. I think it's going to be low scoring in terms of tries. I'm going to go 17-11.
Oh,
Lions.
2 there. There we go. He's convinced himself.
No.
He wants Australia. There's a little part of him that wants Australia.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that the Lions are winning. I want Australia to win because it gives us all.
What is wrong with you? How dare you say that? Is that because Scott Cummins isn't on the bench?
Nothing to do with that. Nothing.
Are you one of those
Scots
people? I want the Lions to lose now because there's not enough Scots in there. You've still got Finn. You've got Blair Kinghorn on the bench.
It's almost irrelevant.
You've got Hugh Jones.
I think the Lions will win. For me, because we're winning Test 3. I just don't see how we come home having not won the series. I literally can't. Well, I've got my head. I've got my head.
No, you're picking your head. You're picking your head if that happens.
That's how confident I am.
Now you say that, I want Australia to win too, James.
So, yeah. But I just think there's stuff going to come out of this game which could potentially swing it. But again, I'm clutching at straws. A red card, refereeing decision, an injury to Finn Russell, which we hope doesn't happen. But it's going to need something like that to happen for Australia. Yeah, to turn the tide. And look, we're loving it. It's been a long old season. It's been a long old season for us in season 9, right? It's been a long old season for the players. But I think with such a big build-up for it to be a damp squid, if the Lions were to win this game comfortably at the weekend, the third test is completely irrelevant. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, it'd be great. 1904, 121 years ago, a 19-match tour was when the Lions last won all 3 tests. There's the stat.
There you go.
Who's bothered?
Who's
bothered? No one's bothered, right? We just want to have this tour where Australia show something. They show a heartbeat, right? And it gives us and gives the fans going to Sydney. I might even fucking fly to Sydney. Do you know what I mean?
Don't tell it.
I want to go to Sydney, I'll be honest. Goodey, imagine this, right? Imagine Australia win on the weekend. We go to Sydney, Australia win the third test, and I come back with a big head.
It's a good story.
I've left holiday early to go to Sydney to be with the boys. I mean, to go to work, and I come home with a skinhead. I can't see it. Can't see it, but it could happen.
You hope it doesn't happen. You hope it. I'd happily and with great pleasure bick your head, James Hamilton, even though it means the Lions have lost the series. But no, I'm going for it. Lions. I'm sticking with the Lions. As much as that fairy tale sounds great, I think the fairy tale of maybe an Owen Farrell winner has got more chance, Jim.
Yes, sir. Okay, Andrew, that's all she wrote. You get on with your day. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, I'm going to get by the pool. And now you've convinced me. That last little bit where you said, if the Australians win, we should go to Sydney. I'm excited. I am excited. It's building for the game.
Look at some flights. That's what
I'm going to do. By the
we
pool
should tell the
today
listeners, you do my admin, don't you? That's how it goes. Like these flights to America, Goodey's constantly texting me, Jim, have you looked at Chicago, New York? I'm like, no. So I think I'm flying via Baghdad. But Goodey's like, no, I've got these flights sorted. So, Andrew, look at the travel.
There we go. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Looking forward to a massive test. It's going to be a big, big game. And if the Aussies can't get themselves up in front of 100,000 people at the MCG, then there is something wrong with them. Jim's backing the Lions. I'm backing the Lions. Jim's hoping Australia win. I'm hoping Australia win. We get a trip to Sydney. But thanks to all the listeners. Follow us on all the socials. But mainly, make sure you're subscribed on Spotify.
Rugby Spod.
Spotify pod.